bring with me a cooler. And the cooler and the ice calms them down. So a lot of bees are picothermic.
What does that mean?
That means that they can both take in energy from the sunlight like a reptile can, but they can also metabolize their own sugars to produce heat.
That's very interesting.
But by putting them on ice, it calms them down. They can't produce heat, and then they're also not getting light from the sun, so they just kind of calm down and take a nap until we get back to the lab.
And how many bees are you collecting in total for
So
this
that's a good
experiment?
question. So originally it was 25 per site across 8 sites. But as we started to process data and look at these different species, we realized if we don't have enough of one species from all the sites, it can't be used. And the reason for that is that bees have specific foraging habits. They only go after specific flowers. And so if we have a bunch of Bombus impatiens caught at UMW and they're pollinating their favorite flower, and then we have a bunch of Bombus gracillis caught off-site and they're pollinating their favorite flower, but we catch none of them at either site, so no Bombus impatiens over here and no gracillis over here, we can't compare those data points because these two different bee species are pollinating different plants. And so the plants this bee species pollinated may still be located here, which is what we're after at the end of the study, but it won't show up in the data because the only bee that we caught over here is not pollinating them. So that's why they have to be the same species across all sites. And so we're going a little bit past our limit of 25, and we're just going to try to catch as many as possible. So when it comes time to process the data and look at everything, we don't say, oh man, I wish we caught more, because now we have to remove all of these sites because we can't use any of the data, and now we don't really have much of an urbanization gradient and we can't really confirm anything. We have plenty of what we need and we can really use and do what we want, essentially.
So what do you hope for with the data you collect? Once this project is over and you've collected all the data and sussed it all out, so to speak, what do you hope comes from it?
So the most important thing is information on all of the plant biodiversity in Fredericksburg. We want to see how it changes. And so what we're really, what I'm hoping for is to see that pollinator gardens are doing really nice progress to kind of help these bee species out. Ultimately, I'd love to see a very wide array of species diversity across all sites, because that would just be the best. But I don't actually know what I'll see, because for the most part, every single site I've gone to has had different plants. But once we start to see them and we start to look at things, a couple interesting things can maybe come to view. Like, for example, at one of my sites that I was catching a lot of bees at was this power line easement also on the edge of the city of Fredericksburg. And I was catching a lot of bees there, but when I went this week, there was nothing. I only caught one bee, and the reason for that, what I think, is that the plant species that were there blooming at the beginning of the summer died off. Their season is done, but nothing else was blooming, so there was no plant to kind of bridge that gap in between this kind of like lack of plants. And I think that's the reason why I didn't catch any bees, is because there were no plants for them to come to. But I did see a lot of milkweed about to bloom, so I'm sure the bees will come back when the milkweed blooms. But something that would be very interesting is, once we see all the plants from all the different sites, we can then make these arguments for adding certain species of plant because they bridge that gap, so that you have a continuous supply of food across the whole summer instead of just early and late.
So hopefully it'll lead to like a victory garden campaign, but it'll be victory for bees.
Who knows, it could.
Victory bee gardens. I think I just came up with a marketing idea.
There you go.